Hello, America. Welcome to the Junto Podcast, where we promote the practical applications of critical thinking and bold creativity. I am your host, Edgar Mills. Thanks for joining us. Hello, America. Welcome back to the Junto Podcast, episode 26. Thank you all for sticking with me, for those of you who have been with me. And if you're a new listener, thanks a lot. I welcome your feedback. I hope that I'm putting out good stuff for you folks. Again, I do this podcast, one, because my friends kind of talk me into it. And as I'm carry on with it, I find that it's very therapeutic and it helps me reason out a lot of things, and I get to do a lot of research and things like that. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening. So not too long ago, I wrote a blog called Paradox of Constraints, and it was talking about how we should view constraints and lack of resources and things like that, not so much as a barrier to our progression or our success, but or a locked door, but more as an opportunity to come up with a creative solution to a problem, an innovative way to get around or to get to our ultimate goal. I have faced many constraints and many closed doors in my life, as I'm sure you have. Most people do. Like, that's life. Life is tough sometimes, and you find a way if you're dedicated, to that idea or whatever. And in that blog, I gave, some unique examples of like Dr. Seuss's 50-word challenge, or the movie director Robert Rodriguez, how his first films were very low budget, yet very creative, and then became wildly successful. And some other examples. Yeah, you can also, from nothing, create something. It's not easy to do at all. But in today's society, supposedly free society, we as individuals, you guys know I'm very big on individualism, being yourself, being your true self, and working hard to be the best that you can be for yourself, therefore being the best you can be for your family and friends and community, and so on and so on and so on. We thrive these days as individuals, not through the largesse of government and not through the benevolence of the big major corporations. Those things aren't necessarily there to help us. They're not there to offer us resources or opportunity. Both big corporations and government are there to amass as much money and power as possible. Maybe at the expense of you, or maybe because of you. Maybe that helps you in some way. I know it helped me. Look, I was in the military for 25 years. So to some degree, I did thrive off the largesse of the government. I wouldn't necessarily call that largesse. I earned every penny I got from the government, and I believe most soldiers do. But with voluntary association, an emphasis on our rights, our freedom of speech, and among others, we can navigate scarcity or hardship with, simple reason, critical thinking, folks. That's why we're here. That's why we're here, to promote critical thinking and bold creativity. Yeah. So with that critical thinking and bold creativity, regardless of constraints, you can do what it is you want to do. And you all know that I reference Ayn Rand a lot, and in Ayn Rand's view, man's mind was the most basic and critical tool for survival. Because, good people, we all know that the natural state of man was essentially naked in the forest. And anything beyond being naked and in the forest relied on creativity. If you want to think caveman or you want to think Adam and Eve, however you want to think about it, you want to talk about constraints. Naked and alone in the forest is the biggest of constraints, right? You have no modern resources to help you. They somehow discovered fire. They somehow discovered that if I kill this animal that's probably trying to kill me and I cook it, man, it's going to keep me alive and nourish my body. It's amazing. If you think about some of the very earliest conveniences, or like fire, for instance, you got to wonder how, really, like put yourself in the moment and wonder how did they invent this? Like it's crazy, right? So the earliest man had constraints, folks, far above and beyond any that we have. And yeah, it's even possible that some of the big corporations are trying to keep us down. I don't really necessarily agree with that. But some of you do, and some of you think that that's the case. And as a Christian, you might look at constraints in your life or things that seem to be holding you back. You might look at those as tests of maybe of your faith, but a test to give you something to overcome, to give you that sense of, of meaning that you get from overcoming obstacles. And you can think, David and Goliath and the big stories from the Bible. You can look at all those and you can get sort of that same sort of vibe of not only overcoming hardship, but embracing it, and to give you a deeper sense of faith. That's one way to look at it, right? But in the question in the modern time here is, how can we harness these roadblocks and these constraints and the paradox of constraint? How can we harness this to build meaningful, successful, prosperous lives without depending on coercive systems, without running back to the propaganda or being hyper partisan on all things, all issues? Everything leads back to partisan politics. How can we get away from that? So what I have learned in my older years here is, I was never a very optimistic guy. I can tell you that. I've always been a very realist, if you will, on life, on things, on expectations. I always said, just expect the worst and be glad if the outcome is not the worst. Well, that's kind of sour. These days, I say have realistic expectations for sure, but have an optimistic attitude. Hope for the best. Well, hope is not a course of action, but definitely strive for the best possible outcome. And then have some realistic expectations, understanding that there will be some roadblocks and that everything is not going to come instantly. Success is not going to be instant. For some people, maybe it is. I don't know. But in today's world, instant gratification, I've talked about the disposable society that we live in right now. You want a thing, you buy a thing, you toss that thing, you buy a new thing, etc. But I'm talking about building something. Building some kind of life, building some kind of career, or building a family even. In my career, it's always been the do minimal resources, like make it happen regardless of minimal resources. And I quoted, I think Ambrose said, "Never have so," in World War II. A commander, but it was in the Band of Brothers book, I think. Never have so few done so much with so little. Yeah, something like that, right? That was a very SF-y sort of mindset. And special forces was very much like sometimes you would have plenty of money and plenty of assets and plenty of things. And then other times you would have nothing. And I've told this story before, but when I was in 1st Battalion 10th Group, one of the very first Afghanistan rotations that 1st Battalion did, my team leader and I want to say the warrant, someone else, maybe one of the battalion warrants went with us. And our commander essentially said, hey, go to Afghanistan and find us a place to live and a place to work. And that was it, man. So off Mike and me went on an aircraft to Kabul. We get off the aircraft and we're thumbing rides, across the country trying to find places to work. And this was, so it was a weird situation because we ended up going under ISAF during that time. And, we can talk details on that, but it was just, the point of that is the commander was like, hey, go do great things. We didn't have bags of money with us. We didn't have any backing of the SOTF because that was ISAF was a different animal. But Admiral McCraven, who was the SOCUR commander at the time, he was determined to get 1st Battalion 10th Group into the fight of the global war on terror. Because up until that point, 1st Battalion 10th Group had not been to Afghanistan or Iraq. So it was weird, it was crazy, but yeah, we created success. We created with very little resources. Ultimately, Task Force Atlas became a thing in Kabul. And as a direct result of that. But so we made do with very little resources and very little, I don't want to say backing. I mean, everybody was like, yeah, we support you, but it was more moral support than it was tangible physical support. So that was crazy. It was unique. It was fun. It was a learning experience, and it was crazy. Optimistic attitude. Have a mind for success no matter what you do, folks. No matter what you do. Have a mind for success. And to do that, you have to have your values have to be success focused. You have to have a value for productivity. You have to have a good work ethic. And you have to be very sort of deliberate in your thinking and the way you solve problems. And look at how a thing now, I might not get instant gratification, or this thing that I'm developing may not, or this relationship that I'm developing may not help me today or this week or this year, but maybe 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, this relationship will become a very critical relationship. You have to be able to look that far down the road, even farther than that. You have to be able to look ahead and see how these things can help. If you have sort of unrealistic expectations that your wife or your company or your bank account is going to support you for infinity and beyond, you may find yourself wrong and becoming frustrated and then becoming, kind of going into some unproductive despair there a little bit. So look at the reality of your situation, think objectively, and move toward your goal. And I relate this to my current struggle. And you guys have heard me talk about my current struggle is building the range. We have a plan for a 23-acre range. And it's currently, right now, we're at the point where we're trying to get special use zoning approval. And that's a long process. It's a 2-month process. Well, my short-sightedness last year or the year before is that I failed to look at I knew zoning was going to be an issue. I just didn't realize that, hey, Floyd County it's a 2-month process. That's the way it is. So what that does, though, instead of me getting mad and being poopy that now I have to wait, well, I'm trying to build relationships. It gives me, essentially, you can say, I have 2 more months to prep. And that's the way I'm looking at it, folks. That's the way I got to look at it. I've been prepping for, 10 or 15 years. I might as well, 2 more months is not going to kill me, right? So I have a good attitude about it. I'm optimistic. I'm a little disappointed that that I wasn't able to get the application in for the September deadline. But hey, it's all right. I do feel like it's going to work out. I don't like the fact that the fate of the range is in the hands of a commission, a board, who, probably 5 or 6 folks, maybe, I don't know, who may or may not like guns, who may or may not use politics as a weapon, who, things like that. They also may be wide open to it. They may look at it as a revenue, for the county or the city or whatever. Who knows? But I have good vibes. I'm putting the good vibes out there. And in fact, for those of you who pray in this audience, please pray for that, that there's a successful outcome. All right, enough about that. Enough about me. Yeah, if you don't have realistic expectations, then you're going to be unreasonably upset when your unrealistic expectations are not met. So, have an optimistic attitude and realistic expectations. I like to do everything with a little libertarian flavor, you guys know, so I'm all about the free market. Optimism in the free market is not blind faith. The free market functions perfectly well without any coercion, without any government fingers in it, without any actors who are acting with ill intent to. It's not a free market if you're out there making active efforts to disrupt someone else's success. Competition is good people. Competition in a free market is good. That's what creates quality. Yeah, that's what creates quality. If I'm trying to start a range and someone else is trying to start a range and we both do, and there's 2 ranges in the same neighborhood, then it's who offers the best service, who has the most professional facility, and all those things. And I'm not mad about that. Competition is good. If anything, it might grow the market more for shooting. And that's just for instance. I don't know that anyone, maybe someone is, I don't know. The free market, folks, it's a good thing. Crony capitalism, on the other hand, is bad. It's a bad thing. It stifles. All right, let's say I'm trying to do my range and I'm trying to stuff money in the pockets of some commissioner. And then that commissioner, because I'm stuffing money in his pockets, now votes against my competition, but votes with me. Well, I've done great things for myself, haven't I? But I have effed the other guy, and that was a market manipulation. I unfairly and unduly shut the other guy out by virtue of stuffing money in the pockets of a decision maker. Well, 1, that makes me an a-hole, and 2, that makes the decision maker who took the money unreliable, untrustworthy a-hole. And if he'll take money from me to crush someone else, at some point in the future, he may take money from someone else to crush me. And those people are out there, folks. That's not just crony capitalism. That's in all systems. Believe me, there's plenty of underhanded business going on in the socialist societies. Communism basically thrives and lives on bribes. So look, free market and competition, good people, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Because you can have faith in yourself, and then if you fail or succeed in a free market, then you'll know, and you'll come back stronger, and you will innovate to adapt to that market, won't you? But if I know that it's just money keeping me in or out of the market, then it's a manipulation. That it's not real data. It's false data, and unfortunately, people go off false data all the time. You do have to be willing to take risks. I am. The good news is I have a retirement from the military, so that's a little bit of a safety net, isn't it? And I know most people don't have that, and I'm conscious of that, and I'm very grateful that I have that safety net. I worked very hard to earn that safety net. The difference is now instead of starting an empire at the age of 30, I'm trying to start an empire at the age of 53. But that's all right. It's all right. You got to take risks. And you got to take risks. I think optimism is and that was a libertarian flavor, right? And then I always do things with a libertarian flavor and then a sort of a Christian flavor. Optimism, folks, you can say trust God's plan. Now, if you're a savage, godless, heathen, pagan, whatever, you can say trust fate, put your trust in the universe. Yeah. But if you're a Christian, you put your trust in what you might say is God's plan. All things work together for the good. Well, we also know as Christians that good might not be for our good or specifically the good we think we want, but the good that we need, right? And folks, honestly, that's the way I'm looking at things these days, is all things happen for a reason. And if a thing happens that I didn't want or didn't expect or whatever, then I have to know that that's ultimately the way it was supposed to happen, and that I now have to adjust, pick up a new azimuth, and continue on following what I believe to be is right. You have to be sensitive to what God or the universe has laid out for you. Now, when it comes to God, I don't necessarily think your path is written, but I think God knows any potential path you may take, and He knows the outcome of each, and He'll let you go as far as necessary for you to learn the lesson, and then put you onto another path. The universe will do that too. If you guys believe in fate, or if you guys believe in kismet or karma, karma, we all know, to be a thing that often comes back and bites you in the ass, right? If you're a shitty person when you were 16 or 17 and you haven't sort of atoned for that shittiness, when you're 53 and you're trying to do a thing, that might come back to bite you in the ass. So you go ahead and try to clean that slate, folks. Go ahead and try to clean it up, because that, whether it's God, universe, or whatever, it'll bite you in the ass. So try to clean that up. Try to be a good person. Try to treat other people well and be humble. Yeah, try to be humble. Avoid entitlement. You're not entitled to anything. I told you, man's natural state was naked in the woods. Anything above and beyond that is to be earned. You earn everything after that. You're not entitled to anything. Nobody owes you anything. I don't care governments. I don't care the ills of colonialism, the inquisitions, the ills of the world past. No one owes you anything. No one owes you anything. You still got to drive on. You got to make the best out of what you got. And if you want a thing, you go after a thing. If you want to be treated a certain way, you treat people a certain way. If you want X amount of money, you do what you need to earn that amount of money. And if you work for someone else, guess what? Maybe that's things you don't necessarily like to do. Depends on what your priorities are, correct? Now, for me, and I'm not sure if it's good, bad, or otherwise, but my priority isn't money. I have a different set of priorities. My priority for the range that we're trying to build is legacy more than it is money. Now, of course, for there to be a legacy, it has to be successful. And for it to be successful, by default, we will make money. But I aim to build a lasting and enduring business with the range. And I aim to do that on the foundation of honesty, fairness, and the ideals of, libertarian ideals, and free market, voluntary association and the ideals of Christianity, where you treat people, well, you treat people like you want to be treated, do unto others and all that. You're not entitled to anything. I'm not entitled to anything. However hard you work for a thing, some people might say, yeah, you deserve it. Now, maybe you do through hard work, but not just through wanting it. Just wanting a thing doesn't make you deserve it. Constraints, folks, there's always constraints. There's always roadblocks. There's always doors to be kicked open, or maybe just to pick the lock. You know what I mean? Depends on your style. Depends on how you do things. And once you defeat a constraint, once you solve a problem, right, then it's on you to be a good steward of what you have just earned through hard work. Don't squander it. Don't crap on it, and don't take it for granted. Yeah. Don't take it for granted. Don't become complacent. That's the word I was looking for, complacent. Once you've worked so hard for a thing, and then you become complacent, well, that's sort of a byproduct of taking something for granted. Or for these big rich guys who are self-made, right? These big rich guys who started out with nothing. They grew up in the ghetto. Their dad was an alcoholic, or he beat him, or he died young, or mom, all these things. Mom had to work 3 jobs, so I had to quit school. And then you built an empire out of tenacity and hard work and just friggin' grit. And then at some point in your life, you're up here driving around in a Bentley and you got the big yachts and things, the materialistic things that have very little meaning. And then you have sway over people's lives. And then somehow that power that you have sort of creeps in and corrupts you a little bit, maybe. And now you sort of take for granted the way things are. Yeah. And then, that's about the time I suspect it'll bite you in the ass. I think. I don't know. I'm not at that point. I don't see myself ever being at that point. And I hope that I don't take for granted what I do have now. The little bitty tiny range that I have in my front yard, folks, I'm very grateful for it. Believe me. And we're almost, we're trying to build the bigger range, not just because I'm at capacity, but because it's always been the plan. But yeah, I'm thankful that right now I have to not put on certain courses because I don't have the space or the capacity to hold enough people. That's awesome. That's an awesome problem to have. That's not a constraint. That's just a product of working hard and trying to build what we have so far. And if any of you out there ever see me getting to the point where it looks like I'm taking things for granted, by all means, speak up. By all means, put me in my place. I hope to never get to that point. I really do. And I don't think I will. I think there's some personality traits in there that I just don't think I will ever be there. Yeah. Libertarian and Christian flavors. They are compatible, good people. Yeah, they are compatible. All right. In the blog that I wrote, I talked about doing less with more, but also sort of from a creative angle. How can you, sometimes if you don't have all these resources you think you need to do a thing, you start like racking your brain, like, man, how can I make a thing happen? How can I do this? And then, it comes to, you start to find ways to do things without these resources you think you need. I know a thing for me, not necessarily artistic, but sometimes artistic, is that a deadline. I work very good under deadlines. And why do I work good under deadlines? It's because, well, I've spent a career having deadlines. I mean, the military is one big deadline, but as far as art goes, like if I have a course coming up and I want to put, because I do all my own art for the ads, and it's simple stuff. I guess you would call it graphic art, but most of it I do, well, almost all of it I do exclusively on PowerPoint. It's crazy, I know, but I never learned how to use all these programs, but I did learn how to use PowerPoint. That's so. If I need to come up with an idea for a theme, for a thing, And I'm sitting here looking at a piece of paper, I'm looking at a computer, and I just like, man, you draw a blank. Sometimes you have creative blocks, folks. That happens with writing, and that happens with art. You have a creative block, and you just sit there looking and nothing. Your mind just blanks out. It just leaves you in a lurch, like, I don't know. But when you're under time constraints, sometimes, man, when you're out in the wild, you're out having lunch, or you're doing a thing, or you're training with someone, or you're traveling somewhere, and that inspiration will hit you, and boom, you can knock out. You can be sensitive to find the inspiration. Yeah, be sensitive to the inspiration, but learn how to put ideas together in a time-constrained fashion. Just even if it's a little piece of an idea, you don't really know what you want to do with it. You just, okay, there's something I think I want to use. Yeah, put that in your little safe. Stick it in there and hold on to it. And next thing you know, man, you're hammering out good work. Your great work. Time constraints usually for me, time constraints really push me to do to create or do a thing. Not always. I mean, like, yeah, sometimes I'll work an idea over for literal months before actioning anything. Depends on your priorities, depends on where you're at, what you're doing with your life. But don't take time constraints like, oh my God, I only have a week to do this, and then rack your brain. Yeah, just take a piece of an idea, sit on it for a minute, and just a minute. And then, take another piece of another idea, sit on it for a minute, and get going. And I'll give you a little anecdote. I don't want to say burned. I used some marketing guys when I was in Colorado. I thought that I needed somebody more professional to help me sort of develop my website and sort of give me some ideas for how to make not commercials, but ads, sort of an artistic but formalized sort of thing, right? I don't know. I had a guy that come and did a course out there, and turns out he was like a marketing guy. He was like, "Oh yeah, we can certainly help you." And then he showed me some work that they had done, and they had done a sort of a makeover for Denver University, which is sort of a prestigious school, Denver University. And he showed me the digital stuff, like the website and the color scheme and like the whole theme. And man, I thought it was brilliant. It looked good. I didn't want that for my stuff, but I mean, I thought that particular piece of work was pretty brilliant. And then they showed me a logo that they did for a company, a sort of a rebrand, and it looked good. It was professional work. It was like, okay, that's nice, man. I like that. I didn't want that for my website or my company, but for what it was, and was it a pet thing? Something? I don't know. I can't remember what that one. But yeah, I thought, man, wow, this is good looking stuff. This looks good. It was structured good. The information on the website was good. All that. And then I gave these guys my sort of world. I said, here, look, this is what I do. My website was, granted, when it first started, it was a little chonky, a little whatever. And these guys, I think I spent $3,000 or $4,000. I think $3,000. They asked me what my budget was. My budget was nothing. It was zero. I didn't want to spend $3,000 even, but I thought, okay, if I put $3,000 into this, man, I'm going to be rolling. It's going to look good. So I give these guys my stuff. I'm like, here's what I get. Here's my world. And I had some ideas of my own that I threw at them. And then they threw back some sort of ideas to me. So one of the main things I was concerned about was my, I guess you want to call it pro forma, or, my financials and things. Folks, those of you that know me know that I do not math. I do not math. Math is hard. Math is difficult. So I had some numbers worked up, and what I showed them, I'm pretty sure was already beyond whatever it is they were going to do for me. Because the guy who was there was three of these guys. And one of the guys was like the money, financial sort of smart guy. One of the guys was like a creative, and then the other guy, the guy that took my shooting course, he was like the nucleus. He was the guy that put it together and made it make sense and look good. And the money guy looks at me and he says, "Well, where do you know EBITDA? Do you know what that?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, man, I got the internet. I looked it up." And then I showed him sort of my slide deck for my pitch, right? My sort of investor pitch or my loan pitch or whatever for money. And it was about 8 slides. And the guy's like, "Wow, man, this looks really what? How'd you?" I said, "Well, look, man, I read Guy Kawasaki's The Art of the Startup." He's like, "Oh, wow, wow." I was like, "Yeah, wow, it's a book. I got the internet again. I got the internet. I'm not, so." And then they come back, and I throw some ideas at them because it was dragging on a little bit. It was dragging on. And these guys, you know what? You can see, I'll tell you what the only tangible result of that $3,000 was. If you go on my Osprey Shooting Solutions website right now, you'll see some on the bios for me and my team, you'll see some headshots. And for me, my son, and my best friend Timmy, you'll see some nice clean headshots. Yep, that was essentially $1,000 per headshot, folks. They got us. They got me. So, but I want to say this, man. So one of the guys, he was German, and the artistic guy, apparently. I mean, go figure, right? Artistic German. And so I had an idea of like the table of elements. And I thought this was a good thing. I thought we could relate that to shooting courses and have each course have its own sort of element and kind of do it like that. And it's not 100% original idea. There's some stuff out there with that, but I wanted to have an educational vibe. So I thought, man, table of elements, I'll have sort of a chalkboard sort of background type thing. Yeah, I think, do something like that. So I come back, a week later, a couple weeks, and this guy shows me a sort of a really rudimentary table, like a thing, and it had the rifle on it. It had like a little silhouette of a rifle. And it was one of the most elementary, and I looked at it, and we were sitting in their shop, and my friend Timmy was sitting there with me, and these 3 guys were sitting around, and we may have even been sipping on some brandy or something, and he shows me this, and I said, "You know what this looks like?" And he says, "Yeah, what?" "Yeah." I says, "This looks like what a German thinks an American AR-15 looks like, but has never seen one." Of course, my best friend laughs. The German guy looked completely defeated. And then the guy, the money guy, was like, "Oh, well," it's like, "Nah, this ain't gonna work. This is not what I want." So ultimately we got the headshots. We parted ways. They got 3,000 of my dollars, and I got nothing usable. Yeah, nothing usable. So that was a lesson learned for me, and I was a little bitter about that, but I was very optimistic going in. But you know what I didn't have? I didn't have realistic expectations. And at the end of all this, my best friend Timmy sits with me and he says, "You know something, Edgar?" He says, You're a bit of a perfectionist and you kind of have OCD and things like that." He says, Don't look to anyone else to work on your dream." He says, "You do your thing, man." And he says, "You'll know if it's," he says, "you'll know when you have what you like. Don't let anybody else do it." And I thank him so much for that, man. I didn't thank him right then for it. I was like, "What, really? Seriously?" But looking back, him saying those words, you know what? I need to call him and tell him this, man. Maybe he'll listen to it on here. But him saying those words to me hit hard. I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm dependent. Not that I'm saying depend on yourself only, but I was looking to these guys to do something for me that I thought I couldn't do. I thought I was constrained by my own creativity and my own, smarts, really. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I just built in my own constraint by having to deal with dudes that did not have any grasp of my vision whatsoever. And I want to say it's not that I couldn't articulate my vision, because I articulated the shit out of it. These guys knew I can talk to you about my business, folks, my shooting business, and I can get very passionate and I can be very detailed. And I can tell you all about it. And the vision should be crystal clear. And these guys just didn't get it. So, yes, that was a $3,000 mistake that will never, ever happen again. All right. Man, how did I get on that? What do constraints do for us? So I mentioned a little bit ago about being sensitive to what God or fate or the universe has in store for you. Being sensitive to what is right. When you're doing a thing, does this feel right? Because I strongly believe if you're doing a thing and it feels right, then you probably, and I don't mean superficially right, I mean like it feels right, deep, then it's my opinion that it probably is. So be sensitive to what God or the universe, whatever it is you do, or your stones, your crystals. I'm not promoting idolatry or what do they call it? Necromancing and all that shit. I'm not advocating or condoning or whatever. Different people believe different things. Be sensitive to what's in store. Be sensitive to what you're supposed to be doing. And when you face constraints, oftentimes what that does to you, if you don't have unlimited resources, what that does is sort of it gives you some clarity. It clears out all the noise and the clutter. And it causes you to focus on what you do have. Yeah, that's right. And when you focus on what you do have and what can you do with what you have, even in a creative way, like, okay, I have this. There's only so much so many directions I can go, like literally. Now you can focus on making one of those directions the best. Yeah. Clears the clutter. Silences the noise. How many of you are walking around with so much noise in your brain? The social media, man, that creates noise right there. Clear the clutter out of your life. Start with your garage. Yep, that's what I've done. I've started cleaning my garage. Clear the clutter. You can see clearly. So don't look at constraint as a negative. Look at it as a positive. Okay, that helps me focus. That's a clearing of the noise. I talked a little bit of mysticism. Yeah. You believe in fate. You believe in something other than God. Or maybe that God acts through different things. Fate ultimately is just a consequence of our actions and our choices. Now, what guides us to make certain choices, maybe that's a little bit divine, but if you look at fate, like this is going to happen, it's written in the stars, right? But fate really is ultimately a consequence of our choices. Yeah, that's really what it is. So not only do you need to be sensitive to what God has in store for you and what you think fate is, but you also, folks, listen to me and listen good. You need to be sensitive to objective truths, objective facts. And I'll give you, for instance, and I'll keep using me as an example on this range business. Does your skill support your dream? Yeah. Does your skill support your dream? I think my skill fully supports my dream. And I think I prove that on a daily basis with my clients. So that's sort of an objective fact. Have you done is the market there for what you're trying to do as far as business goes? Does the market support what you want to do? Well, Rome is a unique market. Northwest Georgia is kind of a unique market. But based on a whole bunch of analysis, yeah, I think for us, I think the market is wide open for what we want to do. I think it will support. Yep. So if you have a dream and a passion project, but there's no market for it, it's just something you really love, have a realistic expectation there. Or if you think you're going to be the next, rapper, the next Jay-Z, do you have the skills that Jay-Z has or had? If you think you're going to be the next EDC DJ Titan, right? One of my very best friends loves EDC music, electronic dance music. And he's always talking about these various DJs. And look, I clown on the DJ business. I clown on it. But apparently, it's a very technical skill. Do you have that technical skill? If you want to go be the big EDC guy wearing, big like Hello Kitty, costumes and stuff, do you have the skill to work the buttons, man? To turn the steel wheels, Do you? I don't know. You need to have objective facts there. You need to look at things objectively and think that does what I want. If you think you're going to be the next artist, yeah. Or if you think you're going to be a brilliant writer. I write blogs not because I think I'm going to be a brilliant writer, just because I like to express myself using the thesaurus. I like to use, words that I don't normally speak with. I'm a very informal guy in person, but you can write a little more formally because I did go to school. I don't math very well, but I write pretty good. I did enjoy literature and English and grammar and things like that. I didn't mind that stuff at all. I liked it. Math, on the other hand, yeah. Be sensitive to not only what the universe has for you, but be sensitive to objective facts. Yeah. And the Christian, what's the Christian spin on that? Well, Christianity does, in fact, promote free will. Yeah. In fact, yes, you have free will. You can choose to believe in Jesus, that Jesus is the Son of God or rose from the dead, or you don't have to. They're giving you the path. Christianity is giving you the path. They're not by any stretch making you go on it. Not by any stretch. So you have free will, right? So from the Christian perspective of all the things I just said, being sensitive to objective facts, be sensitive to this guidance that you get from, if you follow Jesus, you pray for a thing. Well, prayers are answered in very different ways, good people. I know, the atheists and all the people who poo-poo on Christians, they joke on prayer. They joke on it a lot. But prayers get answered. They do. They do in different ways. And people assume when a prayer gets answered that was going to happen anyway. That's just fate. Well, you believe the way you want, and I'll believe the way I want. Prayers get answered every day, folks. And in prayer, even if you're not asking for a thing or an outcome or anything, you're just praying for somebody's soul. Hey, you know what I mean? Somebody who's a goddamn heathen. Hey, please put your hands on this dude or this lady. It's a reflection. When you're in prayer, and you're in reflection. The only difference is you're talking to God. Yeah. Is God going to answer back? Well, with a voice that comes, a deep James Earl Jones voice that comes through the heavens. It's very deep and it surround sound. Nah, I mean, maybe. I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm just saying, probably not. It's probably going to be something like you're just out in public and then you have just some friggin' epiphany. You see some homeless dude there who looks like he's about to, die, and you happen to have some Chinese takeout next to you, and you're like, hey, man, you want some food? That you might think that's not God guiding you, but it is. Yep. Never mind that. You might have an effect on people in ways you don't know just by the way you act out in public. At any rate, be sensitive to it. Be sensitive to it. And from that perspective, folks, constraints, things that are roadblocks, that might be just there to guide you in a different direction, folks. A pivot point. Maybe you were heading in the right direction, and then you got off azimuth, and you reach some obstacle that, like, okay, do I need to go over it, under it, or around it, or do I need to change directions completely? Yeah. Now, if you got to do a lot of backtracking, hey, man, that just builds character. Yep, that just builds character. So be sensitive to that. All right, now I'm going to get a little anti-state here real quick. For libertarian flavor, folks, the libertarians are small government, right? Don't accept what the state writes out as fate. Now, that said, if the state rejects my special use zoning, that the state has had a hand in my fate, haven't they? Am I going to go just dig on that land anyway? No, I'm not. That's going to be something that causes me to change direction. That's all that's going to do. The government has overregulated every piece of our life. Every piece of our life, the government has overregulated. Because one, they think they can live your life better than you, and two, they want to control you. I'm not going to go off on this, folks. Don't tune out. I'm not going to go off on this. The state is coercive, so regulations and things that dictate whatever your field is, whatever it is you're trying to do, get around that stuff. Just learn as much as you can about it before you go down a path. And that's what I told you. I came up short in that on this zoning stuff. But don't accept. Well, you have to accept law and regulation to a degree. But that don't mean you can't continue on. And that don't mean you can't find loopholes, just like rich guys do. Yeah, rich guys find loopholes. We can do that too, just through adamant study. So yeah, don't just because they say, oh, you can't do that, or the board, they don't like to see this, and well, they don't like to versus illegal. There's that's different things. So don't necessarily be an individual, a freestanding, autonomous individual, and follow your path. You hit the state, you hit the constraint of the state. Figure out a way around it. Over, under, around, calling something by a different name. There's ways, folks. You can find ways. So I know some of you out there, well, I have sort of a diverse audience, I think. And I know when I mention God, some of you cringe. And but look, the only other competing ideology that I have in my life is objectivity. Now, everybody says, hey, Ayn Rand was an atheist. How can you follow Ayn Rand so adamantly and still be a Christian? Well, because I'm a critical thinker. And yes, I've done a paper on this, folks. I've done a paper on this, and I say this every so often. Go back to my blogs on thejuntopodcast.com and read Objectivity or Objectivism versus Christianity. Are they compatible? Yeah, they're compatible. Are they 100% congruent? No, but they are compatible, folks. Yeah, because they both reject victimhood, and they both embrace and enforce individual responsibility. Yes, individual responsibility, individual agency. You made your bad decisions. Whatever reasons why. Motive is irrelevant. Why you made the bad decision. A bad decision will come to fruition. And once you realize, like, yep, I've made a bad decision, don't blame other people. Yep, it's not time to blame other people. It's time to go, all right, this is now a constraint. The result of that bad decision has now led me to a roadblock, an obstacle, a constraint, and now I must course correct, un-F myself, and drive on. That's the way, folks. That's the way. Yeah. Oh, let's see. I'm not a big journal. Everybody talks about journaling these days, writing down things in a little daily journal. I don't do that. I write down ideas that I want to talk about. I don't necessarily journal, though. Do I meditate? I don't know. I'm looking for, and what I'm looking at here is ways to help develop this sort of mindset of optimism and resilience, sort of along with realistic expectations. But be optimistic, man. That. I was not optimistic through even the majority of my adulthood. Only in the past, man, maybe even since retiring 5 years ago. Maybe the military was part of the reason I was such a grumpy son of a bitch. But only in my latter years am I really appreciating the power of positive thinking and optimism. Man, that's terrible that I wasn't open to that before. Yeah, I think I've always been a problem solver. I trust my gut on a lot of things. I think I have a good foundation of skill and not education, but life experience and things that, yeah, I was a good problem solver. I'm still a good problem solver. But, sometimes maybe I complained when I shouldn't have or didn't need to. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just now having this realization as I'm talking to you guys that, man, the majority of my life has been spent being a grumpy son of a bitch. I once had a team leader, and we didn't like each other too much. I wasn't on that team very long, and he called me a curmudgeon. And I was like, well, shit, you're half the reason I'm a curmudgeon, The military, the dumb shit in the military makes you a curmudgeon sometimes. Yeah. He called me a curmudgeon. What do I do now, though? I'm very mindful, folks. I'm very thoughtful about the way I do things now, the things I say to people. Now, I'm passionate. Yeah, and I'm a direct communicator, and I don't believe in hiding information. If I'm having a business meeting with somebody, I don't strategically hold back information. If they want to manipulate if they want to do things shady, we'll see that sooner or later, and then I'll just shut that shit down. But I don't strategically hold back information. I let everybody know what my intentions are, And that's not how do I get to this mindset? Well, I think being direct is very helpful in maintaining a good attitude. I know that sounds crazy because I was direct when I had a bad attitude. But, I guess it depends on your attitude, kind of depends on your directness of how that's taken. I guess if I had a more optimistic attitude, I could still be direct, but people would just take it in a better way, I imagine. Yeah, man, my military career probably could have been a lot smoother had I known then what I know now. Oh, shit. And then think to yourself, as you're journaling and you're meditating and you're thinking about, okay, how do I make good things happen? How do I make my project get off the ground? How do I get in touch with people who are supportive or we could have mutual benefit? Yeah. Well, think to yourself, what actions do you do? What voluntary actions do you do that align with that goal and that purpose? You know what I'm saying? You get your priorities, folks, and I've said this 8 million times, is you got to have your priorities in order. What's important to you? The things that are important to you. Let's say the number one thing. Well, okay, I would have to say my grandson is probably my wife, and then my grandkids are very high on my priorities in life. So things I do, of course, they are a consideration. Of course they are. So, for instance, if I end up deploying, if I take a contract and go overseas, again, here in the future, which I really don't want to, but, money is a powerful persuader. Not out of greed, but out of, look, folks, I hate to admit this. I'm paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, I am. Unfortunately, money is a major part of life. But how did I get on that? I'm not sure. What I'm saying is the decisions you make every day and the actions you take every day, do they align with what your stated priorities in your life are? Excuse me. And that's one of those things where you just have to be honest with yourself, folks. Yeah, you just have to be honest with yourself and answer that question to yourself. All right. Being sensitive to what's out there for you, what God has for you. So now we have some priorities. We're sensitive to God's will, or the will of the Norse gods, or Krishna. We're sensitive. We know what direction we want to go. We think we know what's important in life. How do we make it happen? How? Well, very few people are lone wolves. I have also discovered in my latter years I learned this in the military too, but networking and building relationships, good people, whether it's logical relationships, like for me, it would be other people in the gun business. That's a logical relationship, but also unlikely relationships. I don't want to say Well, I don't want to say it's an unlikely relationship, but one of the people I consider good, sort of friend and a maybe colleague is a guy named Nathan who he's not in the gun business and he don't train people that shoot. He trains people. They do outdoor adventure, camps and climbing and hiking and like coaching, spiritual coaching and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of an unlikely relationship for a guy who teaches people how to shoot guns. But because I also do land navigation and because I also do mountaineering and other leadership development stuff, I reached out to that, cold called that dude. And then because we had some mutual relationships, yeah, and now I think me and him are good buds. And yeah, it was kind of an unlikely relationship that developed. And these are important to have in life. These are important to have in life. And you can build these through some common goal or some mutually beneficial goal, or it doesn't have to be transactional either. You just maybe just like somebody, you go have a cup of coffee once in a while. Understand that everything isn't transactional, good people. And if it is for you, then I don't know, man. I think, and I read this somewhere. I don't know who said it. I wish I could start researching these quotes a little more. A measure of someone's character is how they treat people who can do nothing for you. Yeah, every relationship doesn't have to be transactional. There doesn't have to be a benefit in me going up to the coffee shop and seeing my bud Mark and say, "Hey, how you doing, man? What's new? Haven't seen you in a while." That doesn't have to. There's not. Just be genuinely interested in what your friends are out there. Haven't spoken to them in a while. Yeah, doesn't have to be transactional. But hey, in order to build a successful business, you do need a network of people who care about you and look out for your interests, or throw you some opportunities here and there, or throw you some contacts, or just come out with you to support you a little bit. Yeah, to be able to be innovative and to be able to move forward under heavy constraints, under like lack of money. So this is a thing. There's a guy that I sat down with just recently, and he said, and my friend Justin has said the same thing to me before, but this guy said, "Hey, money's not the problem." And I said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! Wait a minute. if if money wasn't the problem, I would have a friggin' tactical wonderland by now that would be successful and just killing. You know what I mean? Money is my only problem." Do you know what I'm saying? When it comes to building business, if you have the skill and if you have the plan and you have the functionality and you have the groundwork laid and you have the policies and the SOPs and the curriculums and all these things that you've been working on for the past decade and 2 decades, the only problem is money. Yeah, the only problem is money. For me, that's for me. To me, money is the constraint, the one and only constraint that stops my forward progression. And I'm working and I'm trying to figure out how do we navigate that. So how do we navigate that? Well, I'll tell you how. I had a meeting with this guy because I built a relationship with a fella who come out and shoot. I told him, "Hey, this is what I got going on." He's like, "Oh man, interesting." He sits on it. He thinks about it for a while. And then he comes back to me later on and goes, "Hey man, what do you think about XYZ?" And now we're all three sitting in a coffee shop together talking about, money's not a problem. Hopefully that works out for the benefit of everybody involved. But I wouldn't have been able to get money without that relationship. Well, I'd be able to raise some money, but not what I'd need to build the project completely. You need to collaborate with other folks. And I think I did a podcast on this, way back, collaboration, team building, build a team of people, even if they're not going to be like physically working with you on the ranch, like just a network of people who either through mutual benefit or just have your best interest in heart, Yeah. So if you're not as resourceful, find someone who is resourceful. And yeah, Sure, you got to provide value to them for sure. But hey, man, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and you might have to go through a lot of them to get that cat skinned. Yeah. So on collaboration, right? On that, from a sort of an objectivist Ayn Rand sort of perspective of that. Now, I don't know if you guys read Atlas Shrugged or not, but building a network of rational individuals who share sort of some similar vision as you, maybe not the same, but like maybe just a general idea. Ayn Rand, that's what happened in Atlas Shrugged, isn't it? They slowly, John Galt slowly built a coalition of people who believed sort of the same system, and they believed in trading value for value. And you know, in the business world, that's what you got to do, value for value, whether that value is money for labor or services, or whether it's barter, service for service, you know, whatever. And look for people who can help you be more productive, right? Even unlikely ones. Oftentimes benefit, you can mutually benefit each other, even if your fields are completely different. It doesn't have to be in the same field. It doesn't have to be anything. You guys can just seek to help each other be more productive. And that was very much a theme in Atlas Shrugged, for sure. And we know that within the Christian faith, yeah, building a community, that's what a church is a community of people who probably live in fairly close proximity. And hey, love your neighbor. It says it right there in the Bible in the New Testament. Love your neighbor. Love thy neighbor, if it's King James. And you can build like-minded little networks that way. If you want to do a nonprofit, I bet a good place to do that is from your church friends. You know, a charity, a little soup kitchen, or something, some youth program. That's probably a really good place to do that, is go to your church and find some likely candidates who are like, yeah, that sounds good. That aligns with the way we believe. We agree with what like the long-term goal might be or whatever, and boom, bam. I think in a church, yeah, a church is simply a community, a physical structure church, right, where people go on Sunday. You know, the church is a different thing, right? That's the flock. That's everybody, the church and all the people involved. And if in that Christian faith you're trying to build allies, and you maybe find some unlikely allies up at the pub, you know what I mean? There might be some heavy drinkers out there who maybe they don't go to church. Maybe they're a little bit heathen. Maybe they still chase women. You know, who knows what. But they see value in what you're doing because it talks to them, maybe, I don't know, spiritually, but like they just agree. They have some compassion for whatever. And that might turn somebody who you might otherwise, I don't want to say be enemies. That's a strong word, but you might not associate with otherwise. The next thing you know, now you're playing softball together, and you got your partnership in a nonprofit. Don't isolate, folks. Don't live in a bubble. Don't live in a bubble, and don't stay in your damn social media bubble either. Your echo chambers. You know, break out of that shit. We're seeing the results of all that, of that isolation and those echo chambers. We're seeing the results of all that, and it's carnage, and it's horrible, and it's disgusting. So get out of your echo chamber. Get out there and talk with people. Throw your ideas out there. Don't do it from a place of judgment. No. Do it from equal ground. Yep. And then in this network building, right, from a libertarian perspective, yeah, voluntary association, folks. That's one of the principles of the libertarian platform, of the libertarian ideals. Networks thrive through voluntary association. People you want to do business with. You shouldn't be compelled to do business with anybody. And cronyism is not voluntary association, folks. That's still coercion. There's an exchange of money, and it's under the table, or it's behind closed doors. It's nefarious. Cronyism is bad. Government favoritism is bad. Government should not pick winners and losers. The government's only job in life is to ensure the rights as laid out in the Constitution are not violated. Well, even the rights beyond the Constitution. But the government spends more time violating those rights than they do defending them. Cronyism and government favoritism it's garbage. But in the libertarian, and I'll give you a perfect example, is the Great Create coming in November, folks. That is a perfect networking opportunity right there to meet people who care about freedom, who care about individuality, who care about, I don't know, alternative lifestyles, people who care about, people care about politics even. Well, to be there and mingle about. You might meet somebody who's a cryptocurrency guy, and you've been curious, and you've been like, man, do I need to get into this or not? And you got somebody who's fully knowledgeable right there to let you know. They're not going to coerce you, man. They're not going to tell you bullshit to get you to sign on a dotted line. They're just going to tell you what it is. Here's what's up. Here's how it works. Here's our website. Check it out. Yeah, man. The Great Create, perfect network opportunity. And you might meet business partners there. My friend Jake, he also hosts my podcast on his network, Peaceful C Productions, or the Peaceful C Network. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's monetized or not. I don't know how any of that works, but I know that's a whole nother audience that has access to my podcast. Yeah. That's a simple thing, man. That's a simple thing. I've got their link up on my website for the Peaceful C Network. You click on that and boom, you got access to all these sort of libertarian-esque podcasts. Some of them are political. Some of them are about crime, things, banished Big Brother, all kind of stuff, man. All kind of stuff on there. You should go check it out, in fact. TheJuntoPodcast.com. There's a link down there to the Peaceful C Network. You should check that out. Yeah, networking, making friends, building allies, whether they're unlikely allies or not. Yeah. And why would we look for unlikely allies? Like there's untapped markets. Name a thing. Name your business, mine being the gun business. There's untapped markets in little pockets of society. And I'll give you, for instance, I've said their name before, and I'll say it again. Hopefully they don't mind. They might disagree with some of my politics, but the Atlanta Pink Pistols has been out here on a few occasions to train as a group, as a private group. They believe in the Second Amendment. They come out and shoot guns. They get professional instruction from me. I get a little bit of money from them, and we treat each other nice and we respect, and we shoot guns. Talk about all the important things about shooting guns. I would say, was that an unlikely ally? I don't know. Maybe. Also have church groups that come out. Now, the church groups and the Pink Pistols are unlikely allies for sure. I'm just sort of a middleman on that, really. I'm not putting them together necessarily, but hey, if you like to shoot guns, you like to shoot guns. If you find yourself at a match and you're a God-fearing, church-going, Christian, and then you're on deck, and then the shooter is a transsexual, that might feel a little awkward to you. But hey, that's the way it is sometimes. So embrace the variety of life, good people. You don't have to jump in somebody's lifestyle. Just to interact with them. You know what I mean? Be a rational human being, for crying out loud. Unlikely candidates. Unlikely candidates for helping, not spread a message. No, my message is shooting guns safely. I believe every American should be armed, personally. But don't turn away the unlikely allies. Don't do it. What kind of Well, anything you do, there's risks and there's rewards. There's a payoff. Sometimes it's not good. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's not a payoff. Sometimes you get burned, like that $3,000 marketing endeavor. But if you're out networking, right, and you're out trying to build a genuine network of people who you cannot be coercive. You cannot use manipulation. You have to be forthright. You have to. Otherwise, if they come to find out later that you are not as advertised, the whole thing could blow up in your face. So I don't even know that needed to be said so much as, look, treat everybody with a base level respect and do not manipulate people. Do not manipulate people. All right. So what I'm encouraging you there is, do reach out to people. Do try to build a network of likely and unlikely candidates, likely and unlikely people that you may or may not. I got a good story. I was on a podcast with a guy, Mike Kirchina, and he told a story on that podcast, and this was one of his podcasts, that a guy was standing in line at like a coffee shop, and Mike had ordered his coffee, and he was waiting. And this guy was all tattooed up and looked like a, whatever, punk rock type dude. But Mike was like, man, this is a curious looking guy. He approached him. He was like, hey, brother, well, my name's Mike. What do you do? What's your situation? And this guy ended up being a very, very unlikely. He didn't look the part, right? And it turned out to work out, right? And I'm pretty sure Mike did a podcast with this guy, interviewing him. Yeah. Because he was in an unlikely profession, and I want to say it was to do with, high tech sort of defense industry type tech. And I know some of you think that's gross. I think it's pretty gross, but the guy was an interesting guy, and he had some very interesting things to talk about. So yeah, you might crash and burn. Somebody might tell you to get bent. Yeah, you might crash and burn. Somebody might tell you to get bent. You might be out there trying to have an honest conversation with the masses, and somebody shoot you in the friggin' neck. Yeah, you might be trying to have an honest conversation, and some irrational factions may look at that and completely distorted way. Yeah, that's possible, isn't it? All right, good people. Moving on. I hate to go dark. I often do. I'm still optimistic. I promise you I am. Sometimes I just slide dark a little bit. So in order to defeat these constraints, in order to overcome these obstacles, whatever they are, it is of the utmost importance, folks, that you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be true to yourself. You have to know and acknowledge your limits, and don't have a pity party because of them. Just acknowledge that, like, yes, this is where I'm weak. This is where I'm strong, whatever. Acknowledge as you are. And then from there, make a way forward. If you lie to yourself, you're building a foundation on sand. So be honest with yourself. That's very important. Refuse to participate in this perception is reality, this fake reality. Be rational, use objective truth and objective facts to get to where you're going. There is no my truth. I've said it, I'll continue to say it. There is no my truth. And if you try to build on my truth and some perception is reality, this is my perception, so this is what exists, you will then, once again, you're building on a foundation on sand, folks. Objectively analyze what resources you do have. Yep. And objectively analyze reality as it is, the objective reality. Not from your necessarily point of view. You're going to see it from your point of view without a doubt, but you need to be able to step out of yourself and see it from reality. And you need to be able to step out of yourself again and see it from the opposition point of view. Yeah. Be honest with yourself. Don't buy into any of this fake reality that's pervasive out there. Yeah. And don't buy into quick, if something's too good to be true, it probably is. So don't compromise your values and yourself over some quick win, some easy win that ultimately isn't a win at all. That honesty that with yourself, right? That honesty with yourself will keep you in a constant state of okay, here's what I can do, here's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to reflect on it, right? You may grow throughout a process. You may grow. I've grown throughout this whole process of the range development, etc. I have grown a lot exponentially. It's insane. So be true to yourself so that you can honestly analyze what you've done right, what you've done wrong, and then adjust as needed. Yeah, adjust as needed, and then continue on with some genuine faith in your God and in yourself, and then purpose. Yeah. And then drive on. Any dishonesty with yourself is going to cause this internal sort of doubt, this self-doubt, and then this negative self-talk. And then when you're laying in bed at night, you're going to be poo-pooing on yourself, and you're going to be thinking, man, I refer back to the imposter syndrome. I wrote a blog on imposter syndrome. And you're thinking, man, I'm not good enough to do this. Who am I kidding? All right, that's what not being honest with yourself does. And then it builds up this negative self-image, and it erodes your trust in yourself, right? Be true to yourself, because being true to yourself means you're going after what makes you feel good and feel right and feel happy. And whatever your measure of success is, some people it's money, strictly. Some people it's getting married to a pretty lady and having a bunch of babies. For some people it's having a cool ass motorcycle. There's lots of levels to that, but so be honest with yourself, and then be honest with yourself. And keep the self-talk positive, right? Keep the self-talk, the internal, keep that positive. And then be honest with everyone else as well. Do not accept anything under coercion or manipulation, because it'll go away. Anything you gain from coercion or manipulation is going to go away. I promise it. I promise it. And some people may see that complete honesty as a constraint. Well, I'm telling you to embrace the constraints, right? Embrace them and use them as a guide. That's what I'm telling you. And you can take that for what it's worth. I said earlier that I do not use strategic omissions or lies. I don't mislead anybody on what I got going on at all. Never, ever. I don't mislead people on what my capabilities are, on what my intentions are, or anything like that. Dishonesty in business is contradictory to any libertarian or Christian ethic whatsoever. Yeah. So you may not be a libertarian and you may not be a Christian. Well, guess what? Dishonesty is still wrong. I know, progressive left dishonesty is a tactic. Don't use that tactic. In communism, dishonesty is a tactic. Don't use it. Have a strong ethics system. If you don't have it, look it up. Go to the internet, look up ethics, follow them. Yep. So I like to, almost through the lens of almost everything I do, I sort of use my Christian values, my loose Christian values, right? I don't think I'm a selfish guy at all, and that's a very Christian thing. But then the virtue of selfishness that Ayn Rand shares with all of us, that's, I believe, to be two completely different. It's the same word exactly, and if you look up the definition, it's going to mean the same thing. But rational selfishness is how you get better as an individual. But then selflessness as a Christian is how you help other people get better. If you're selfish as a Christian, you're not helping yourself or anyone else get better. And if you're selfless as an objectivist Ayn Rand follower, well, you can be selfish in your own endeavors and to be selfless and as a Christian and still accomplish both of the same goals. I've said that a million times. Those two philosophies are not contradictory, folks. Rational self-interest benefits everybody who comes in contact with you. Rational self-interest in business. Everybody does that already in business. If you're an honest business, how can I help you and how can you help me? Well, in retail business, it's you give me money and I give you a product. Well, in the free market, if that product's shitty, people will stop buying it. And you either got to step up your game and make better quality or you go out of business. So there's rational self-interest there. It's in my interest to make a better product. It's in my interest to be a better instructor. Yeah. It's in my interest to be as good of an instructor as I possibly can, because I believe when I display a certain level of skill and articulate concepts in a certain way, well, what I believe is that makes the customer feel like they're getting quality for what they've paid for. Yeah. So it's in my interest, my rational self-interest, to be better at everything I do in this business. And then by virtue of being a Christian and being selfless, I do the free everyday carry course once in a while. Sometimes I'll volunteer my efforts to someone, a church or something. Or sometimes I'll go speak like a school or something like that. Yeah, to try to, maybe spread a little, hopefully knowledge a little bit. Yeah. So in these endeavors, reflect on self-reflection. You know what I mean? Sit around and think about, what am I doing? Could I do it better? If I do things like that. Think about the things that are the roadblocks and the constraints in your endeavors. And think about, okay, how is it a malicious constraint? Is there some way to defeat the constraint completely, or do I have to go around it? Do I have to figure another way to get around it? Think about that. Consider, what is your objective reality? Not just how you feel, but objectively. And then think to yourself, this is my reality. And in my reality, how do I create value for everybody who interacts with me? Yeah. Yep. Constraints can spark genius. They can force your hand to where you execute at your highest level ever, or you've created the most brilliant work of art that you've ever created, because you were pushed into a corner. Yeah, that can happen when you have a sort of realistic optimism. Yeah. And when you're sensitive to your purpose on this earth, and when you make when you build this strategic network, and when you're honest with yourself and other people. Yeah. Yep. Constraints can be the impetus for greatness if you have all those things. So consider these values I talked about. Consider these libertarian ideals. Even if you don't vote libertarian, that doesn't mean you can't appreciate the libertarian ideals. Yeah. You don't have to vote libertarian. I wish you would, but you don't have to. You can still appreciate the libertarian ideals. And you can still be sensitive to what your purpose on this planet is. So that's what I'm leaving you with, good people. Embrace libertarian ideals and characteristics, and treat other people in that perspective, regardless of who you vote for. And then be sensitive to what you are put on this planet to do. Everybody has a purpose on this planet. And if you believe that God put you on this planet for a reason, no, that's what I believe. If you believe that you emerged from a single cell organism and that your purpose is self-driven, okay, whatever, drive on with that. Be sensitive to whatever you think your purpose is, I guess. Be sensitive to purpose. Yeah. That's where it's at, folks. That's what I've wanted to talk about this evening, and I appreciate you guys listening. Okay, again, October is full of shooting matches. Please check them out on ospreyshootingsolutions.com. November, December, we have land navigation courses on 2teamguys.com. And if you need to get caught up on the podcast, we are on all the platforms, Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and all the other obscure ones. We're Podbean. We're on there. We're on all those. And please, if you're not on those, then just go to thejuntopodcast.com. And there you can listen to the 3 latest episodes, and then you can read all the blogs as well. Please, folks, please do it. And in so doing, put some thought into them and then give me some feedback. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who disagree with much of what I say. I'm happy to hear it. I may not entertain you. I don't know. But I feel like this, if not helps someone get some perspective, well, that's what I hope it does anyway, folks, is I hope that I'm helping you sort of get some perspective on things, whatever the topic of the day is. So anyway, good people, I appreciate you. Thanks very much for listening. Treat each other well. Yeah, have good manners, folks. Treat each other well. All right. I love you guys.